first of all, thank you for taking the time to speak with me. I really appreciate it, and I want to congratulate you on your latest book, which I just finished reading today. Actually, the 12th Insight, and I really enjoyed it. So congratulations.
Well, thanks a lot. It's been a lot of fun. It was a long time coming, but now that it's here and I got it out, I think it's being well received.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, because I mean, it just came out this month. So.
Yeah, the 15th of February. Yeah.
Yeah, very, very fresh. Yeah, no, that's great.
And by the way,
yeah.
You might want to know that its first week, it made number 18 on the New York Times bestsellers list.
Wow.
So
that's a good way to break in. I know that what was it? The Celestine Prophecy was on the bestseller list for, what is it, like a record 73 weeks or something?
Yeah, a long time. Yeah.
Something.
Yeah, well, it was 3 years, so whatever that comes to.
3 years. Okay, that's even more. It's 52 weeks in a year.
Yeah, it was on the list for 3 years.
Amazing. That is amazing.
Yeah, that was amazing. But the new book, the first week I think it came out really well, and it'll those numbers will be reflected on the standings that come out in the actual paper on March 6th.
What's the deal with ebooks? Is it also simultaneously out as an ebook?
Yes.
And how?
Yeah, it's everything. Audiobook, ebook.
Yep.
Everywhere books are sold, so they really got it out very widely.
Oh, that's great. How do you feel about the whole ebook concept? I guess they say that some of the new books on Amazon are outselling their physical companions. That ebooks are starting to really have a huge impact. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm a real book person personally, but I know that for some people it's more convenient, and especially if they read a lot of books every year, and they can, of course, download them from a library in some cases, and that's convenient. And but if you're a reader and you read 2 books a week, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, no, it seems reasonable. I certainly think that there's room for both, and I just think it's great that people are reading, whatever format that is, that it's on. So, that is great. Yeah, I've also got quite a list of questions I wanted to run by you. Mostly thoughts that came up from reading your newest book. So let me maybe take it from the top here. Let's see.
Are you taping?
I am taping. Yes. I have started taping. If that's all right.
No, yeah, absolutely. I just wanted to, I can go. I phrase things differently if someone's not taping, but taping is great because I can go into as much detail as I need to.
Absolutely. You feel completely free to go into as much detail as you want. And then what I'll do, I'll be editing it down for a 2-page article in the next Watkins review. So.
Okay.
But yeah, go ahead.
Wonderful.
Definitely.
Thank you.
So yeah, let's see. So obviously, the book highlights the notion of synchronicity, and you mentioned that the 12th Insight is also known for the Mayans. It's the 9th wave of creation. Is that right?
Well, I don't link them that closely. We're pointing. I'm pointing to the same phenomenon that the Mayans were pointing toward. They, the Mayan calendar is a prediction, and the best scholars are very clear that it's not what they predict is not doomsday. It's this ninth wave of creation, and there were 8 previous ones, and all of them had a certain time period through history. And now, interestingly, in our time right now, they established that we would begin this ninth wave of creation, and they call it a unity consciousness.
Unity consciousness.
Unity consciousness, which means, of course, that the barriers between people will be lessened, between people's beliefs will be lessened, and so forth. And of course, these books, I like to say up front, I'm not making this stuff up. This is certainly my. I'm an artist and I write as a novelist, and so I'm putting these stories out. But the stories are an attempt to illustrate a shift in human belief or consciousness out there. And so the reason it took 12 years for the latest book in the series to come out is because I was looking to, trying to discern what was really occurring out there.
Well, you mentioned that in the book that also that it might already be happening in 2011 rather than 2012.
Yeah.
Could you expand on that?
Well, I'm going from some of the best scholarship. I love Carl Johann Kalaman's work on the calendar. I really believe he has the most accurate timing about the calendar, and he points to all this being felt.
Yep.
Coming in right really as of March the 8th.
March the 8th.
So March the 8th is when he said it will begin to be most impactful.
2011.
And then of course it'll last all the way through and into 2012 and beyond in terms of its impact on human culture, according to him. Now, what?
Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
I would just add that. I'm describing also a step in consciousness, a shift in human spiritual beliefs. It's kind of a sea change in what we're experiencing in the area of spirituality. And I of course would agree that it's coming in right now.
Yep.
And it will just set a new cultural direction, I believe, in the next, in the years to come.
Yep. You mentioned, which I thought was quite interesting. I was looking at your webpage. Let's see here. Here we go. And you've got the what is it? It's a bi-monthly prayer project. What is it? It's called the Global Prayer Project. That's right.
Yes.
And I thought that was a very very interesting initiative where you're trying to get people to come together, and I think for the one on March 1st, you even mentioned you were mentioning a lot of what's happening in the world today, going from I think the Christchurch earthquake to some of the tumultuous things that are going on in the Middle East. It sounds like you're very much in tune with what's happening in the world, and everything that you're talking about. It really is very much about it is about trying to understand everything that's happening and trying to have a real effect and make real change, which I find quite inspiring. How is how is this whole global prayer project going? How is that evolving?
Well, it's probably been it's probably our third year, maybe even our fourth year. I can't remember now, but of doing this, and so we really do have we hook together either over what's called a bridge line, where people just call in and we're all hooked together on the phone, or people can connect through their computers through the web.
Yep.
All over the world. So, we have people that certainly call in both ways. Usually the largest numbers that we can tell. We can't really tell how many people are connected. But we believe in the thousands around the planet. So, every 2 weeks we get together and we have a group prayer visualization, about a troubled area in the world, or a key turning point in history, or elections and everything else. We focus on in order to not to affect our opinion so much as to uplift the people involved and visualize that they come to spiritual connection so they can come to their greatest wisdom about what should be done about a particular problem.
Yeah, that's great. So you mentioned perhaps, you're not sure just how many people it's reaching, but it's certainly growing. In the book, in your latest book, at some point you mentioned, it's on page 221, you mentioned that a number of 144,000 people as some type of threshold number that is necessary for a next step, I guess, in this process that humanity is going through. Can you can you maybe expand upon this number, this 144,000? If maybe if you get that amount all of a sudden in the global prayer project, would that have any relation, or yeah?
Well, those are the prophecies out there. It's a number that's used in Revelation. Some people think that that's the number that it would take for people to be really united, and connected spiritually all together in kind of a pure way. Now, I don't hold that number. For me is just a multiple of 12, and I think that's that's a spiritual number. So
a square, even
multiple 12. Or who knows? We would love to get 1 million people on that prayer. And so
Sure.
But who knows what all I know in the book talks about this, of course, is that each of us has an influence, and we can feel it, we can observe it, and that's in the book. That's what I really wanted people to be aware of, and to prove to themselves that they have much more influence on other people and on the way that the positive way that humanity can evolve and progress than they think, and so it's a way. I talked about that number in a way to inspire people to come together with others and really participate in this unity consciousness that's happening.
Yeah, that's good. That sounds great. Also, you mentioned several times the notion of using a visualization test to see if a desired scenario or images are a good idea or not. Could you? Yeah, is that? I mean, I found that very interesting and a really a great practical method to try and tap into your intuition before you act on something.
Yeah.
Can you? Yeah. Can you perhaps tell me how I mean, it seems like visualization is a huge part of a lot of what you do from this weekly prayer, bi-weekly prayer visualization project to different methods. I mean, how important is visualization and how we're connected to the world?
Well, I think that the idea of being aware of what I would call your intuitive guidance is a chief feature of this deeper spiritual connection that I'm describing.
Mm-hmm.
So of course one has to integrate take all the steps that I seek to lay out there in order to make it all work together. But certainly learning to become aware of intuitive thoughts that come and to take them more seriously is a huge step in terms of really living at this deeper level of spirituality.
What about dreams? How important are dreams?
Well, I think dreams can give us messages just like that are also guidances, just like an intuition would be. A dream is a little bit harder to interpret, but
mm-hmm.
To me it comes from the same place, and we just have to find out, is there a message for us in this dream, and how can it be applied? So it's definitely part of our intuitive knowledge and reception.
Cool. You've got lots of really interesting points about how the Judeo-Christian and Islamic cultures all have similar notions of the end of days, and how the extremists in all of them have extremists in those camps that would like to see some form of an apocalypse, and how actually you believe that they're misinterpreting the possibilities out there, and that the rapture is actually something quite different, where it can be an enlightenment of sorts for everyone to come together and change our power structures to be less corrupt, less manipulative. Is that right? Am I?
Yeah, that's a good encapsulation of it, because I believe all the prophetic literature is offered from the point of view of various religious perspectives, and if you take it all as a whole, you can see the general message for all of humankind, and that there is a renaissance that it predicts.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't need to go through Armageddon to participate in this renaissance.
Well, I certainly hope not, but it is disturbing to think that there are many out there that do believe in that. And in the book, of course, you've even got this the apocalyptics, what their name was. This group of them coming together from different extremes just to cooperate to try and help bring about the end of days. Do you think that the world is under that it's how do you see the probabilities? I mean, how do you believe that the future is set, or that we still have a certain role to play? Or I guess that's a loaded question there.
Mm-hmm. Well, my opinion is that it can go either way. That we have free will here, and if we do nothing, that's why it's the hour of decision, in my view. So if we do nothing, who knows what's going to happen? Because there are people that want to end the world. They want the Armageddon to come, the final battle, to end everything.
Yep.
So the moderates, though, of every religion don't believe that. And, the book is a call for the moderates, people who who believe that there's a future for humanity, and humanity can make progress in all these areas. We need to come together with a kind of determination to do what we can to have an influence on the world, and of course that's the major point of the book.
Yeah, absolutely. You also give some excellent examples of how this how ideologies range from the leftists to the rightists, and how extremists, whenever you disagree with them, they'll often try and ridicule you by putting you in the other extreme category.
Yeah.
And how important it is to try and be open-minded and listen to both sides, and try and have a greater level of understanding. It kind of actually, it almost reminded me of Jon Stewart on Crossfire. Did you ever see that?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Where he basically accused both sides of being partisan hacks, and did quite an amazing job. Got the show canceled. So I was able to use live television to really do something quite special. What do you think? Do you think that? I guess that was a while ago. Do you think that the U.S. politics are shifting towards perhaps more understanding, or are we becoming more polarized? How do you see the U.S. progressing?
No. I think the more people focus on who's telling the truth, and who's being very aware of who's trying to control, by lying, then our reaction to that corruption is to stand for civil debate of the issues, and stand for people telling the truth of what their agenda is. And, coming to that is, I think that's happening in the United States and other places as well. I mean, it's happening certainly in the UK, and certainly in many parts of Europe, where, people are just tired of the dogma of left and right, and nothing getting done.
Yep. Well, it's very interesting. You also mentioned that as people's intuition grows, you'll have people will sense lies more, and it will be harder for politicians to be corrupt.
That's right. Or anybody else.
Or anybody else. And that sounds very very promising. Obviously, well, maybe not obviously. I mean, truth is very important, but at the same time, there must be a room. Is there room for white lies? Surely they can be useful. I mean, how do you see? I mean, because how do you view that? Does it have to be black or white? Should people always just tell the truth? If your girlfriend asks you if she's gained weight, what do you say?
Well, I think that what we're learning to do is to find a way to tell the truth lovingly in service to the other person, trying to be helpful to the other person. Mm-hmm. I have to be on the side. You have to just say the truth. Of course, if the girlfriend asks, it's some other kind of test. It's really not. They don't really want the truth, and I understand that. But it's it also. But and not the rest of the time, and all of the time, really, we have to strive to not shade the truth for our personal benefit. That's what gets us bad karma. And I believe, again, we're understanding how karma works, and if we want our lives to go better and easier, then we have to get karma working for us. And that begins by just finding a way to say the truth as a service to someone else. If if you're telling the truth to hurt somebody, or if you're telling the truth to make yourself look good or have power over somebody else or any of that, of course it doesn't count. Right. It's truth in service that creates a karmic, a positive karmic effect. And again, I'm just observing out there what people are talking about, and there's a whole return to integrity and authenticity out there. And I think that we're coming to this conclusion that karma is real, and telling the truth and being of service to other people all the time, having that motivation as our end in mind, not making money, not making ourselves look good, none of those things. Yeah. So again, and as I say through the book, you don't believe me, don't take my word for it. Prove it to yourself. Give it a try.
Yeah, the notion of service is very, very interesting. You also mentioned that to some extent we're always at the mercy of strangers, and it's by being of service to one another that we will survive as a global people. That I found that very, very, very inspiring as well. Let me see here some other questions. What about let's see, Sally? How, if you don't mind my asking, how did you meet Sally?
What met her in a Unity church in Birmingham, Alabama.
Great. Okay. So you were both going to church and.
No, she was visiting. She was visiting from out of town, and I had a counseling practice there.
Mm-hmm. Because you had been practicing as a counselor for about 15 years before you published Celestine Prophecy, right?
That's right. That's right.
Okay, that's great. And how was there any synchronicity when you met, or how? Yeah, were there any interesting insights, or I guess I don't know. When did you know that she was the one for you?
Well, I had known her mother for a long time, and then when I met Sally, I mean, it was one of those, bells and whistles went off, and we started dating and never dated anybody else after that. Oh, so we were both pretty certain that
from the get-go
it was a sort of relationship. Yeah.
Well, that's cool. Some interesting geographical things. I don't know if you've seen, but on the Watkins website, we've got a link to a spiritual map, which I just put together recently, and it shows you a map of London, and you can actually zoom out and look at the entire world. And if you click on the map, you can submit your own spiritual experiences to it. So it's basically an interactive map that anybody can add their geo-spiritual experiences.
That's great.
And it's going quite well. And I'm always looking for things to add to the map. In your book, I found it interesting. You mentioned that 3 mounts were aligned. You mentioned form almost a straight line. You mentioned Mount Sinai, the Secret Mountain in Arizona, and Jabal al-Lawza, or however, I'm not sure I'm pronouncing the third correctly. Tell me, have you been to all 3 of these locations? How did you learn about the fact that they all form a straight line?
Well, it was just an observation I made on a map that they're roughly in a straight line. There's of course, there's the legends. The legends of ley lines, probably,
yep.
And they're power grids on the planet, and I don't argue for the reality of these. I thought it was very interesting that these mountains line up, and I'm very, very familiar with Sedona because it's just a a place where we had a house for a long time. We go every year,
Mm-hmm.
and it's it has. And the fascinating part is that Mount Sinai is very. It's kind of has the red rocks as well as Sedona. Sedona's famous for its red rocks out there. Mountains.
I think you mentioned
So it's,
you call it Sister Mountain or something. I think.
Secret Mountain. Oh, Sister Mountain. Yeah, that's right.
For the one in Mount Sinai.
The Native American lore, or indigenous people's lore, is that mountains are very powerful, have an identity of their own,
Mm-hmm.
And are related to one another. And so that was part of the mystique of the journey was exploring these mountains. But it was in service of the other insights that I was trying to bring to bear.
Right. Absolutely. That's great. Let me see here some other questions. You talk about the importance of organic food and avoiding all of these artificial things like MSG. What about things like GMOs, genetically modified organisms, foods? Is there a place for them, or what? How do you see that?
I didn't mention those in the book, but since the book has been on the press, there's a lot more information, very very credible information that these genetically modified foods are causing big problems in people's health.
Mm-hmm.
So the consequences of those are very dire on the planet, because it's very, very difficult to pursue an inspired spiritual life if you don't feel well, because of the food that's bringing you down. So
you can't sustain your presence, right?
You just feel lethargic and so it's one of the largest corruptions in the world. Is this manipulation of food.
Yep, absolutely. And what about? Are you a vegetarian? Not that that's important. Is that, or is it?
No, I just try to. I eat less protein. Let's put it that way than the average person out there, because I think people get too much. But
mm-hmm.
I'll eat fish and chicken, and the lighter animal protein. But the main part is that you just eat three-fourths of your diet should be vegetables, and the rawer the better.
3/4? Did you say? How much is that right? 3/4?
3/4.
3/4. Wow, that's a good high percentage. Okay, very interesting.
That's just the doctors. I think the scientific literature is pretty clear that if you don't eat 3/4, salads, vegetables, you're degrading your body. It's just it's the real new. It's the food pyramid they used to teach students from in the U.S. It's just been turned on its head.
Yep, absolutely. It's interesting. I don't know if you had a chance to see in the latest Watkins review. We published a 100 list. Have you had a chance to see that?
No, I haven't yet. They're supposed to send me a
Okay,
copy.
well, I'll make sure you get a copy. Basically, it's a list of the 100 most spiritually living, influential people in the world, and you're number 11. A very prominent position. Always room for improvement, of course, as well. What's interesting is the median age, which we mentioned in the list, is 67. So the average age 67. You, I believe, are going to be turning 61 on the 19th of March, I think. Is that right?
That's correct.
So you still have you still have a couple of years before you you reach the average age of the 100 list. How significant is age, and what are your views on that?
Well, I'm a proponent that, we're living longer every year in spite of all the bad things we do to our health.
Yep, true.
And that, if we were living healthy lifestyles, that the average life expectancy would be, I think, in the 120s or so, or maybe even longer. And, most people just eat themselves to death very tragically at an early age. Yeah,
that's true. But at the same time, it is impressive to see that there has been some improvement due to improved diet and some improved, in vaccines. In the 20th century, the average, the lifespans of people in Western countries has increased significantly. I think.
I'm not a proponent of vaccines. I think that especially in children, they do more damage than good, and they're primarily a medical scam, and certainly come from a collusion between government and the large pharmaceutical companies. I'm not a big.
Sorry, yeah.
I'm not a big fan.
So you wouldn't attribute that to vaccines. Then what? And maybe not. I don't know. I just threw that out there. Maybe you're right. I certainly believe that the pharmaceuticals have much too strong a lobby in the U.S. and obviously all of that should be taken with a grain of salt.
Well, in the U.S. there's a real problem because I don't know how it is in the U.K., but it's a big collusion between government and the vaccine makers. And the fact of the matter is, the good research shows that something like the flu vaccine absolutely does not work, and it's full of all kinds of terrible things like aluminum, heavy metals, and just pollutants, just terrible stuff, viruses. There's a lot of wild viruses in vaccines, and
they mentioned some kids get Down syndrome possibly as well from some of these vaccines.
Relationship between autism and these childhood vaccines is irrefutable.
Yeah. No, that is awful. But what do you attribute longer lifespans to?
Well, I just think we're gradually eating better.
We are eating
better. Gradually, the doctors that I read really talk about that most of the disease, the low-level communicable diseases would have pretty much gone away by themselves anyway without vaccines because of the advances in hygiene.
Yep, that's right.
So we've just created these time bombs in our bodies, and I'll give you a statistic for you that you can quote.
Yep.
People that get the flu shot every year for 10 years have a far greater chance of developing Alzheimer's in later life than those who don't. So, they also, I don't know about in the UK, but in the US, they're trying to push children as young as 2.
That's crazy.
To take a flu shot every year.
Yeah, that is crazy.
When there's no evidence, there's absolutely no research that even clears these vaccines to be used on children in the first place.
Yeah, and during this,
and then second place, they absolutely don't work.
Yeah, even during the whole avian flu pandemic, they had so many vaccines left over. They're trying to push them in the U.S. I heard as well.
Yeah, and it's all over the world too. It's just it's not just the U.S., but it
is all over the world.
But at the same time, I should say that more and more people are becoming aware of this.
Yep.
This conspiracy between big government, big pharmaceuticals, and the pushing of vaccines.
Well, I can tell you that there are a lot of that the laws are different in Europe, and patent laws are different, and a lot of you don't have as strong a lobby for pharmaceuticals here. It's still obviously very strong, but nothing like what you see in America. I mean, it's really it's in America it's definitely out of proportion. That's interesting. Tell me also about the human potential movement. I read that was a big influence on you, and also Maslow. Obviously, we're all familiar with his hierarchy and how that plays into being able to take care of yourself before you can self-actualize. Tell me a little bit about that. How is that influenced?
Well, when I was in graduate school, I of course was highly influenced by the human potential movement in the early '80s, and it was all the Maslow was just one. There were many people who began to talk about the greater potential of human beings, that was not being actualized fully, and of course that began a whole wave of techniques. Meditation came into the Western world with a greater scope. People were more open to meditation in the West, and of course, and then we had all kinds of techniques, and there was a new appreciation for counseling and extending our ability to get over past traumas and all the rest. It was the beginning of, hey, humanity can be functioning at a higher level. We as individuals can be functioning at a higher level. And, of course, I, as well as others at that time, realized that it wasn't, of course, just a psychological phenomenon in terms of being all we can be. This was also, and maybe primarily, a spiritual phenomena. And
that's very interesting. Can you expand on the distinction between the two?
Well, there's, to me, there is the psychology of a human being is just a competing bunch of theory.
Yep.
And but the human potential movement did give us key concepts, like the idea of ego. We all have an ego, that part of ourselves that wants to control and run our lives. But yet we also, as Carl Jung showed, we have a higher self, this broader, bright brain that can kick in, that gives us all these other faculties of mind, our mental abilities, such as the perception of intuition, the perception of mysterious coincidences or synchronicities that seem to reveal the kind of hand of providence, or spiritual hand working in our lives, that if we get in the flow of that, and I would argue, have argued in the new book, that it's an alignment with the spiritual design of this universe that allows us to get into a positive flow in our lives where, think you go better. Life doesn't need to be hard.
It's an interesting word, alignment. I picked that up. You use it several times in the book. It sounds maybe that's a new. I don't mean in a bad way. Maybe it is an important new buzzword. I mean, right now, sustainability is kind of a big word, and it's a very useful word that we're using everywhere. I've seen alignment come up a good amount of times, but it seems to be maybe growing as in popularity as a concept. Yeah. What do you think? I mean, in terms of keywords, the notion of alignment, there's it seems to encapsulate a lot of what you believe in.
Yeah, I think that as we understand more about actually living spiritually and being able to be in a flow where we're actually helped in life, where we receive this guidance that we can act on, that we, these mysterious coincidences occur where people help us, or they, arrive in our lives at just the right time to give us this information to allow our soul's work, our goal to come into being. All those are the result of being in alignment with, the sort of the divine flow, or whether you call it Zen or
sure, or tuning in and
surrender, or whatever you call it. There's a divine flow that we can get into, and it's I think the feeling is one of being in alignment or being in coordination with divine intent, both with the way it feels in our own souls and the way it is seeking to be manifested out in the world.
Oh, that's great. Also, I mean, I wanted to ask about, you mentioned, let me see here, that in the future, intuition will help prevent crime. I quote, "Unfortunately, we aren't enlightened enough to institute those kinds of interventions yet," on page 60. I thought that was interesting. At the same time, a little scary as well. It reminded me a bit of Minority Report. Have you seen the Philip K. Dick based inspired movie? And obviously, at the end of the movie, it shows the danger of also acting preemptively as well, right? But we don't always.
Well, I don't think it'll ever come to that, but I do think it's. I think it's part of our mental ability that comes in with heightened spiritual consciousness. We have we receive premonitions so that the stupid accidents don't occur, and that we can avoid problems before we get in the middle of them, and all that. And if everybody was opening up to that sort of ability, then we would, like the animals, as I said in the book, we would leave for higher ground before the tsunami hit, just like the animals do.
But that, by the way, that does happen to some extent in Hawaii. They do have a range of speaker systems across the beach, and if they do sense, if they can see a wave coming in, obviously if it started too close, it wouldn't work. But they do get sometimes a 30-minute or hour notice, and they do go for higher ground. So obviously we can't do that yet with everything. We've got with earthquakes, we're quite miserable at predicting things. And obviously with tsunamis, there have been some disasters, right? But we are improving. It seems our ability to see what's around us, our level of awareness as.
Well, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the individual ability to receive an intuition,
right? So
that there's something to be avoided and to leave. That's what I'm talking about. Although, we're starting to get better.
Right.
Yeah, I'm talking about I'm talking about individuals paying attention to their intuitions, you know.
I see. So yeah, I see. Yeah, all about intuition. Well, what about? So okay, no, fair enough, and that is very important. Highlighting that is the key. Very much about, as you say, human intuition. What about the technology? I mean, how? Well, obviously, yeah. What's your take on technology? Do you think that it's important for spirituality? Will computers one day develop intuition? Will they ever have that? Will you have artificial intelligent intuition? Will what? Yeah. Well, is that important at all, or not? I mean, obviously, the internet is a great thing in terms of us communicating and creating this, what some people have termed collective intelligence. But as you mentioned, there are other ways to have a collective intelligence. You don't need an internet necessarily.
Well, yeah, I'm not a big fan of people of machine intelligence at all, and I think it's just on the face of it very dangerous. But on the other hand, I just don't see it. I think it'll be very simple to keep it under human control, and I don't see machines developing. I just don't think it will get to a point where machines will sort of take over and build themselves smarter and smarter until they take over humans. I mean, it's certainly a danger. But I think it'll be. I think human. I think they'll find that that even though you pile massive computer power into a robot's brain, that it will not ever
match
reach a degree of human wisdom. And consciousness. So it's still just going to be a machine with a bunch of wires firing, and it's not going to be alive, and it's not going to be able to outwit humans ever because of this spiritual factor.
Right.
So it's only by pretending that humans are spirit, at our core spiritual beings.
Yep.
Can you think that a machine will be just as smart as a human being? I just don't.
There's a
that will be
distinction.
proved false.
Well, there's a distinction between being smart and being wise, right? They can play chess, but that's different to, as you say, being spiritually enlightened or aware, or being able to engage in a conversation.
Especially being able to play chess and think of a poem you want to send to your sweetheart at the same time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's interesting. What about you mentioned at the beginning that you're an artist and even though you've written a novel. And it is a work of fiction. It's still based on research on a lot of real things out there, and that you're using your book as an allegory. Can you talk about fiction versus nonfiction? I know you also wrote a work of nonfiction, but sorry,
2 books of nonfiction.
2 books, because the one that I'm familiar with was what was it? Let me see here. It was the Celestine Vision, Living the New Spiritual Awareness, I believe.
Yep, that's one. And I wrote another book with Michael Murphy, who founded Esalen Institute in California. You know that. In 2002, called God in the Evolving Universe.
God is the evolving universe. And how? So how is that book? Because I didn't even I wasn't even aware of that. But obviously, I know of the institution and of Esalen, and that sounds like an interesting book. But
yeah, it was a lot of fun, and but I'll just the reason that I primarily have used stories in the Celestine series is that I believe that what we're talking about is not intellectual facts. We're talking about consciousness and the shifts in, spirituality at the lived level. So I just think you have to see it in action. You have to see this characters adopting this higher awareness in their lives and how it changes the way they operate in life and direct themselves in life and allow themselves to be guided in life, I think you have to have a story to be able to really grasp all that, the working parts of all that. So that's, obviously they're parables, but I do say that when people ask, I say all the important parts are true.
That's cool. And obviously it's been, it's amazing to see. I mean, you've made a huge impact. I think, I think I read that your books have sold over 20 million copies or something like that.
No, I think we're somewhere around 14 million.
Or 14, okay. Well, amazing regardless, and it's not just about It's not just about each person that reads it. They also communicate to other people the ideas, right? The whole. It's even more than just the actual people that read it. You're also having also an indirect influence on the world, which is wonderful. Well, that's great. Well, before we wrap up, what's next? What else is happening, I guess?
Well, the 12th Insight calls for, people realizing their soul's dream is to help make the world better, help reform the corruption that exists in the world now. And so I'll probably do my next book will probably deal with an exploration of what's going on in the world. What are the positive expressions of this reform, and also who's resisting it? How is that tug of war? That tension, and especially as it manifests in American politics. So that'll. They'll actually be written much like, first person adventures.
Yep.
They'll just be, true adventures. And so my next books will be about that. So in one sense, all the rest of the books will be about this 12th Insight.
Wow. Well, that's cool. Also, I mean, one more thing. I mentioned briefly the Middle East. I mean, what do you think is happening there? I mean, what do you think is going to happen in Libya? What do you think of what's happened in Egypt recently? The ouster of Mubarak. What do you make of all that?
I think the basic urge that sort of erupted spontaneously in Egypt was very much young people wanting to stand against all the corruption. All the polls of young people in that region even talk about how they want freedom.
Yep.
They want a freedom of expression. They want to have a government that they can fire. Just like in the other democracies in the world, they want to be able to replace people with new people if have an open, honest government, and an open, honest economy as well. So it's very much 12th Insight urge. Yep. Unfortunately, you have all the extremes who are more. They tend more to use an aggressive violence, to get what they want. And of course, what they want is to control people's religious belief in many ways. So, there's a big struggle there. But I think the purest urge, especially among young people, there is to want to be free and to want to have to fight against the corruption they see surrounding them, just like in the United States and just like across Europe right now.
Yeah, well, even Berlusconi, right? It's been difficult to get rid of him for quite a long time now. So it's certainly even in the West, it's to have a liberal democracy is not an easy thing, and it certainly could go either way in a lot of these countries. But yeah, it is surprising to see just how fast things are changing, and I hope it doesn't. Things don't happen to flow back to religious extremism, because obviously that could happen, and instead you'll just see more freedom. It does seem like, as you say, we've got people do have free will, and it's all quite up for grabs in many of these places, and together it builds on a larger scale, right?
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing is for enough people to band together to stand for something better, and that's what you see spontaneously erupting out there. They don't always win, but
what about like Saudi Arabia, where the U.S. has given a lot of support for their more moderate but still monarchy, which is extremely corrupt.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's not just the U.S.; it's all the Western countries supporting that, and the problem is how to get more freedom without opening the door to religious extremism, and that's something that it's going to be very very troublesome, probably, as all this erupts across the Middle East.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating. It is, as you mentioned, it's we live in a very unique time. That's for sure. No, that's great. Well, thank you again so much. It's been wonderful speaking with you, James.
Well, thank you, and I really would love a copy of your latest copy of your publication, and I've heard of it, and I wish you the best of luck.